How do you do? I'm Dustaroo, and I want to talk to you about the future of Dead by Daylight, specifically why Behavior Interactive should start making Dead by Daylight 2. And this isn't even a joke. I know the idea of live service games getting a sequel can leave a bad taste in people's mouth. But I genuinely think it could be the best thing for Dead by Daylight and the future it will and can have. Dead by Daylight is a special case when it comes to live service games, where the benefits of the mass transfer forward could turn Dead by Daylight from what it is now into something absolutely gigantic. And I'm going to tell you why. First big reason, bugs and stability. If you've been around in Dead by Daylight for long enough, you probably know this game isn't exactly what we would call, stable. I do think that we are in the most bug-free era in the history of Dead by Daylight, but game-breaking bugs are still as common as hillbilly players. It's not like you won't ever see them, but when you do, you think, wow, a Billy player, it's been a hot minute. For the second time in a couple months, we've seen flashlights and perks that work with them or spawn them be kill switched, removing a big aspect of the game. Not something crucial for gameplay to happen, but if I took 2 of your toes off your left foot, you'd probably notice and be kind of annoyed. Hey man, I prefer having those toes on there, even if I don't think about them all the time. I prefer having the option to have my toes. Some players are happier than others about flashlights being off the table for now, but it's not just flashlights. It's not also uncommon for your favorite killer to be kill switched just because something new was added to the game. Invisible Wesker still haunts my dreams. Once again, not an everyday occurrence, but still frequent enough to be an issue, and a genuine fair problem for players to have with the game. Bugs happen in every game. There is no one who's going to deny that. Coding is messy and difficult. Every game has bugs, but Dead by Daylight has always been a particularly infamous one for a game of its size and player base. The only other game I could think of being just as buggy but popular are Bethesda games, but comparing Dead by Daylight to a massive open world story game is not even really that fair. It's literally a tiny map with 5 players on it. It's not a lot of moving parts, but this always comes back to when Dead by Daylight was developed. It was never intended, even dreamed of being anything close to what it is now. They had a cool idea that even today is a very niche game to make, where they planned a couple DLCs to rake in some cash from the few people who did buy it, and then they would move on to other projects. So they built a shaky but functional enough foundation. This game was not going to be some long-term service title that would be launching content all the way past the year 2023 or anything, right? So no point in making the skeleton super strong. So they didn't. They did not make a strong base to build on, coding and engine-wise. Then it launched and caught a lot of hype. And then the Halloween chapter happened, and the wheelbarrows of cash started rolling in, and the devs just kept going, and kept growing. And now we are here today. The developers of Until Dawn creating an interactive story game set in and exploring the Dead by Daylight universe, possibly the origin of the trials themselves. A Dead by Daylight film coming out of Blumhouse Productions, and a PvE game set in the entity's realm from Midwinter, whose, fun fact, only other produced game, Scavengers, died before it could even leave early access. So yeah, that's a hopeful looking project. Dead by Daylight is no longer an indie horror game coming out of Montreal, Canada that just has a couple famous horror characters in it. It has become a brand name, a bankable IP in its own right. Just for scale here, Behavior Interactive made $25 million in 2015, and now are raking in $225 million as of 2021, with estimates of $355 million this year. This is not all Dead by Daylight. Behavior also publishes, partners, and even produces its own games, but the 2 most notable recent releases, Meet Your Maker and Death Garden, flopped pretty early into their lifespan. Death Garden so spectacularly, they don't even list it in their portfolio on their website. So safe to say there's not a lot of revenue coming in from other produced projects. Dead by Daylight is their moneymaker. their cash cow. Is it so crazy to suggest that instead of getting a team together to produce another game that will hardly make it to see its first birthday, you could get a small team together and start recreating the game we have now? All the assets, killers, cosmetics, maps, player progression, and move it to a new engine that is not held together with duct tape and prayers. All the hard work is already done. They don't need to design any characters or gameplay, but build this exact same lightning in a bottle they have now, and just make the best version of it. One that can actually run 3 Nemesis zombies in a match without causing massive performance issues. This game is so poorly built that 3 slow AIs make the game unplayable on consoles. And I think we can take a wild guess and say it's not because the graphics are too intensive on the system. I wouldn't have made this whole video if it was just about better game performance and bug fixes. Will the game be better optimized? Yes. A better player experience for everybody? Absolutely, but that's not why they should do it. Why this is something I feel strongly about is when it comes to gameplay limitations and game modes. Let's talk about the gameplay limitations first before game modes. Dead by Daylight killers are rather simple ideas for the most part, which is good. Having more killers be easy to pick up and play is better than most being in-depth and specialized. But there is an endpoint to both of these, and Dead by Daylight often treads over the same ideas just in different ways. Chucky is a good example. He feels fresh and interesting. I even made a whole video about it. A plug right up there. But the ideas with him, besides just being tiny, are just tweaked variations of stuff we've already seen. His slice and dice is just Blight and Oni put into an ugly looking baby. A good middle point, but how many times can we just have a charge or a second to drop an item in a loop forcing a hit or pallet drop, some ability that hits over window or pallet before we feel like it's enough, before we get bored? One of our most different type of powers on the technical level is the twins, switching control between 2 characters. And when the twins launched, wow, that was bad. They caused so many bugs and other issues with the game, I'm surprised players were even able to launch it. I'm not even over exaggerating, the twins brought so many bugs to the game, not just to themselves, but all around the game. For almost a month, the game had been in one of the worst states it had ever been at any point in its history, if not the worst when it comes to bugs. Which is kind of a scary thought, right? That something that does not even seem like such a crazy out-of-the-box gameplay mechanic was such a problem for the game as a whole. Just sprouting fires left and right. You know the devs have not forgotten that. Unlike people forget the twins exist, or they wish they could forget the twins exist. When they design new characters and powers, they are going to be more hesitant with new ideas, if they know the result could be them having to use a kill switch button a lot more. Which sucks, because I genuinely want new experiences when I play as and against a killer. A reason I like Chucky so much is not even for any of his powers, but his height, adding a whole new layer of a fresh experience in how a match plays out. I have to keep a keen eye out for him, low to the ground, and I have to loop a little bit different. It's not a massive change, but it's enough that I feel like it's genuinely praiseworthy. As much as I like that Alien is in the game, nothing feels special about her, except the flame turrets. Her tail is just a better Nemi whip, and she has an underground train station to every generator on the map, kinda like Demogorgon, kinda like Sadako, just in a new wrapping. Good to play as? Yeah. Against? I suppose that's up to interpretation. Being new and creative? No. She feels like an update of mechanics rather than new experiences for the most part, which doesn't take away from the character, but it does take away some excitement when it comes to looking towards future updates. I'm by no means saying we don't get interesting new concepts when it comes to killers. If you can give Singularity anything, it's that he's quite a different feeling character to play as both and against. With his eyes in the sky, cross-map teleports, he feels different enough to feel like a new experience, at least to me. Say what you will about the power level and ease to get into it, but he is unique. We can't know what it's like behind the scenes when they're coming up with killer designs. How much of it is creativity and how much of it is technical limitations? But we can see the barriers. AI like zombies are pretty much off the table. Summoners are a nightmare to do, so it's not surprising we don't have some more crazy ideas like killers being able to alter maps in interesting ways, summon objects, etc, etc. There is a lot of room to explore gameplay wise, but if you're locked in a glass cage in the middle of a room, you can only work with what you got. It doesn't matter what you can see, if you physically can't reach it, it might as well not even exist. Right, killer gameplay done. Let's talk new game modes, events, and server browsers. From a gameplay perspective, I think this would be a perfect way to bring people back to the game. I have seen countless people talk about how they don't play the game at all, have not played in years, but still keep up with the game and watch other people play it, for various reasons. I've heard it's too stressful for them. They don't enjoy playing the main game mode we have now, and we go on and on. So many players still engage and consume Dead by Daylight in so many ways, but play it. One of my personal friends who really likes Dead by Daylight doesn't really want to play it anymore. He's just bored with it. He got his fill. It does not really add anything more. But anytime we talk about 2v8, he talks about playing in a heartbeat. That's exciting. An interesting new experience for him to invest and enjoy. You have to wonder for the reasons we don't have new game modes or any other way to enjoy Dead by Daylight. Is it because the devs just don't want to do it? Do they think it would negatively impact the game? Or is it just making another game mode work would be a technical nightmare with the game we have currently? As much as people like to dump on Overwatch like they have food poisoning, there are some amazing features that really round out the whole experience. Not just new game modes, but there are custom game modes. The Workshop, where players can create their own game modes, mechanics, and publicly post them for others to try. A server browser that allows fans to build up any ideas that come to them, and maybe it becomes a popular mode that other people launch Dead by Daylight to exclusively play. I can imagine a ton of players who don't have that spark or fire to play regular DBD anymore, where they could have their passion reignited if they could try a mode where they could play a killer with their friend, or just even prop hunt in DBD. It's also a great excuse for devs not putting time and money into working on new game modes. They wouldn't need to. When the fans are doing all the hard work and playtesting for them, it just seems like a win-win. And I'm almost positive they would not be able to create a browser or workshop-like system in the current game we have, even if they put all of their time and effort into it. But the biggest reason they should do this is so we can get a stats page. I want to see my wins, I want to see my deaths, I want to see my individual killer playtime and whatever other stats they could have. And I know I am not alone in that. Others would be ecstatic to know how often they got a 4K with their best killer. God, would it inflate some egos and cause some cringe discussions on Twitter or the forums though. But not having stats hasn't stopped those people already, so at least there would be physical evidence to back up their claims. They have said apparently in the past, I'm not sure how long ago, but fairly long ago, that it wasn't possible for Dead by Daylight in the way that it is built to be able to track individual stats like that. At the very least, they couldn't track any of the stats we had before. I'm not sure if I believe them or if there's maybe some other reason, but they are able to track stats themselves, like knowing how many hooks happened in a year. I'm not a game dev, so I don't actually know the logistics behind this, but if they couldn't find a way to create a viewable stats section, then the problem is probably far worse than any of us really realize, reinforcing why they need to make Dead by Daylight 2 Electric Boogaloo. Thank you everyone who made it here thus far, because most don't. This is just an idea I've had in my mind for a while. It really became more and more apparent as I started diving into more killer concepts, power ideas, and just saw how limiting the game actually feels. Like, it has so much room for growth. So I want to know how you feel about these ideas. Does any of this actually seem like a good, idea? Do you like the concept of, DBD2 if they, made a separate game and pushed everything onto it? Or do you just feel like it's so far out of reach that it's just better not to dream? Tell us about it. And when they did transition to Dead by Daylight 2, they could finally make it go free to play. So the monetization model of the game actually makes sense. For any of you that don't understand that joke, you can go watch Mint Skull's video about it. He's very informative and in-depth on the situation, and I highly recommend it. But that's everything I have for you today. So once again, thank you all for watching. My name is Dusteroo, and I will see you all real soon. Bye-bye.